Everyone hear me?
Yes.
I got to figure out how to get a full room on Friday night. I can't get a full room on Wednesday or Monday when I teach. So my name is Corey Morris. I'm an attorney. I also have my graduate degree in psychology. I teach at Fordham University. I'm going to give you the 5-minute version because unfortunately I have to catch a train. It's kind of hard. I'm actually out in Suffolk County. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Suffolk County, I guess at the end of this 5 minutes, because we have a tremendous problem that all of you can help impact, and we need psychologists to help lawyers. So why is psychology important to law, aside from all the reasons you've heard? Anyone here have a little case, Brown versus Board? Anyone know what that is? Somebody screaming out, interactive. Somebody, what is it?
Wasn't that the case where they found out that separate but equal was detrimental to children's self-esteem?
Scream, you gotta say it with conviction. Separate but equal, unconstitutional. Based on what legal precedent? As somebody said, it's based on a psychological study. It was the doll study. Somebody looked at this and said, boy, this is inherently unequal. And if you actually read it, it's called The Simple Justice. It's not a simple book, it's about 600 pages long, but the long and short of it was that they showed through unconventional means that the schools were not the same. One school had much more resources, much more desks, much more books, and another school did not. And that correlated directly with race.
With Ken Clark and...
The Ken Clark, the doll study, that's right. You know, let's not lose that because we still need that. And I'll tell you a little bit about what we call the heroin crisis in Suffolk County. We actually lead the county in debts related to drug use. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I do, and like I said, the 5-minute version. So I started criminal justice background, went into psychology, really trying to figure out where I can make the most impact. And that's what I want to talk to you about, impact psychology. So when I worked for the New York Civil Liberties Union, and we looked at certain things in terms of, for instance, same-sex marriage, and we said, you know, look, there's a lot of law behind this, but how do these arguments pan out? Psychologists help that, and if we remember the progression of the DSM, and really Dr. Bornstein is a great professor who talks about this. If you look at the first DSM, it's about that thick. It gets a little bigger. Anyone have one now? It's like you could stop that door with it if you need to, or somebody tries to steal a purse, just knock them out. But if you remember it went from a progression of homosexuality, right, as a disorder, a disease, illegal, and now something changed, right? Same-sex marriage is now legal. I want to talk a little bit about what Mr. Deskovitz spoke about. We had a record number of exonerations, a record number, over 150. What's the number for last year? Was it 160 something?
Yes, yeah, 140. Well, that was 2 years ago. It was 149. It went higher. Yeah.
Yeah, record.
Not the exact number.
Record number, and it's not because that people are dumping resources into it. It's because there's just people are now recognizing that people have been wrongfully incarcerated, and why. You've certainly heard about false confessions, and until recently, with the aid of forensic psychologists, we recognize that there are certain things, putting someone in a room for an interrogation for 8 or 9 hours, depriving them of sleep, their family, lying to them. Anyone surprised that police are allowed to lie to you? All right, so anyone who's spoken to the police or is confronted by the police, please exert your right to remain silent. Another anomaly, that you have to speak to assert your right to remain silent. Yes, you should invoke that and demand an attorney in New York State. So not just false confessions, but there's a phenomenon in terms of weapon focus. There's also a phenomena not only just in terms of false confessions, but you have a wide variety of not only misconduct, but just mispolicing when someone becomes the focus of an interrogation. Anyone know what the difference between an interrogation and investigation is? I know this side of the room does. Anyone in the audience? When they interrogate you, they focus in. The goal of an interrogation is not to obtain evidence, it's to obtain a confession. So that's why they hold you there. And that's why that process looks the way it does. And if you haven't seen one, there's scenes of a crime, there's making of a murderer, and these are, the strange part about this is these are real cases. These are not hypotheticals. So when you look at job or prospects for employment, or what you want to do, this is what made me focus on what I do. So when I worked through the New York Civil Liberties Union, sort of bring you where I am now, I worked for a civil rights litigator. We handled a number of these very interesting cases, and it's not always so clear. We don't always have DNA evidence. We can't always find prosecutorial misconduct, which does exist, or what's called a Brady violation. An old joke in the Bronx DA's office when some of the individuals would leave is that the scanner was next to the shredder. In essence, when they went to give you Brady material, that would fall into the ladder. It would go into the shredder as opposed to the copier, and people would get convicted really based on less than full evidence. Defense attorneys didn't vehemently advocate, as Jeffrey mentioned, for their clients. And it's a difficult uphill battle, especially when you have cases now that linger in the Bronx for thousands of days. The idea that bail, right? If you think about this, there's cases that we have in our past. Schall, S-C-H-A-L-L. It's a Supreme Court case. There's also another one about a famous mob boss. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But the idea that we have this concept of bail as securing the return of somebody in pretrial release. Isn't that amazing that the idea that this money will make sure that they come back? But if anyone here of Khalif Browder, does that sound familiar? Certainly, there's certain abuses here. We're not seeing the full picture. Psychologists help. I'm going to end on this. Like I said, the 5-minute sort of turnaround. I represent a lot of clients, especially in Suffolk County, with the #1 opium-related deaths or opioid-related deaths, heroin-related deaths. I represent clients whose criminal conduct, now think about this, whose criminal conduct is a manifestation of a psychological disorder. Whose criminal conduct is a manifestation of a psychological disorder. Possessing needles is part of heroin use. Possessing heroin is part of heroin use. Using drugs is part of, usually, a drug addiction. So the same symptom, and my client has been evaluated, usually by prosecutor or the people's essentially evaluated in some instances. In the federal cases, you get what's called a pre-sentence report. I think we mentioned that. And they'll evaluate this person and diagnose that person with a substance abuse disorder, yet penalize them for that very same behavior. And I've compared it to like telling a person with cancer, if your cells reproduce too fast, we are going to incarcerate you. We're going to punish you. And that's the sort of conundrum that we have now. One of many. And certainly if I had more time, I'd tell you more about it. But when you think about these unconventional arguments, I think Jeffrey mentioned, citing statistics, citing what we do to folks who can't afford bail, who are acting out because of what is a mental disorder, a mental disease, or something that we diagnose as you diagnose as psychologists, yet in the criminal context is a legal or disorder. If we look back, 50 or 100 years ago, whether it's American with Disabilities Act that we now have, or same-sex marriage, or Violence Against Women Act, or basically, if we look back in time, this will probably be, when we look at substance abuse issues and how we treat these individuals today, this will probably be a dark time. People in the future will probably look back and say, how did we do that? So I'll leave you with that. I'll write something, or I'll leave a few cards here. Yeah. Anyone wants to contact, yeah. And that's what I suggest to you. When I went through my graduate degree, that's what I thought. How could I make an impact? How could I help people? And I really wanted to leave, positive sentiment on the world. And that's what I think. Don't think conventionally. Think outside the box. I'll leave this here. Anyone has any questions, just give me a call. I have to see. I'm sorry. And yeah, listen. One day I got to figure out how you get a room full. Any questions before I run out of here? Well, thank you for having me.